Hi friends, my name is Jake. Welcome to Canadian Cutting Edge, and today we're taking a look at the BOA by Shieldon Knives. This is a D2 blade G10 handle liner lock knife that is a little bit interesting. We've got a modified, sort of a compound edge blade, but not super compound, like it's not got big things going on it. The designer for Shieldon is Django, and it's a full-size folder. I think I already said that. And you can open it through the flipper or through the hole. Whoop. I was looking at my camera lens instead of concentrating on what I was doing. So yeah, it opens quite well, just like that. So let's get to the tabletop and learn more about this knife. So here it is. You can take a good look at it. And let's do the size comparison right away with the Ontario Rat 1. Line up those pivot pins, and you can see it's a little bit bigger than a Rat 1. So definitely a full-size folder. Certainly a whole lot more cutting edge than a Rat 1. So what do we have? Like I said, D2 steel. You can get it in this black wash finish, or you can get it with a gray titanium coated blade. As you may have seen in the unboxing video, it comes with a Cordura type sheath, Velcro snap, a little elastic band in there, and a belt loop. It's also got a snap. So if you like that kind of thing, that's an alternative way that you can carry the knife. Shieldon's branding right there. So let's put that aside and get back to the details about this knife. The prices are different between the two. The prices are kind of odd. This one is $51.58 at White Mountain Knives. But remember, at White Mountain Knives, you save 10%. So that makes it $46.42 for this version. The gray coated blade is $46.42, which after the 10% off is $41.78 American. So that's pretty good. Just remember to use coupon code CCE whenever you shop at White Mountain Knives. You can see a little bit of oil there on the blade. If you remember the unboxing, there was a lot of oil, and a fair bit of oil on this knife, but on the Shieldon knives, there was a lot of oil. Boy, oh boy, my allergies are just bugging me these days. We've got like a modified K-tipped blade. And remember, K-tip is what the more accurate, the better name instead of reverse tanto, because reverse tanto is such a silly name because it has nothing to do with a tanto. It sort of does in some ways, this knife though, because you've got one angle and then another. But this tip, I'm calling it a modified K-tip. K-tip for Kengata or Kiritsuki, Japanese knives that have this kind of very abrupt clip at the end, a straight clip down like that. That's what it's called. We've got a flat grind, and you've got a transition line that comes right down and meets up pretty close to where the angle changes here. So it's a nice high flat grind, semi-saber kind of grind. We've got a flat back. It's got the edges chamfered off. Some little bit of jimping up here. A nice hole here that's flickable. I showed you that in the intro. The badging BOA, and then there's Django, the designer's name. And then right in there where it's really oily is the model number. I think it's 9043DG1-S for this one. And on this side, on the bevel, we've got Shieldon's logo. And down here on the flipper, we've got D2. So there's a lot of badging. I don't like badging on bevels. You've heard me say that so many times. At least their Shieldon isn't super huge. I would have preferred it to be, up here on the flat somewhere maybe. The sharpener's choil, it's almost big enough. The shiny silver part is starting to get wider this way. And that's because the plunge, just after the ricasso, the plunge going down to the bevel hasn't finished plunging out before the sharpener's choil has ended. So that's why that happens. It also means when you go to sharpen this, you're going to have to be careful that you don't run into the plunge and create a lot of filing marks right there on the plunge. How thick is it behind the grind? All those dimensions, I'll give you all of the dimensions a little bit later on in the video. So that's pretty much the blade. Now we've got the pivot area and flipper and everything. There's the flipper. We've got two little lines milled in there, a little bit of jimping. Light switch method works like a charm, and just pushing down on an angle works just great as well. So it's not hard to deploy the blade on this knife. The action's quite smooth and easy going. The pivot, we've got screw heads on either side. Now, I don't know if this is a D-shaped pivot pin or not. I haven't taken it apart. I'll do it for you guys for the first time. But we do have pivot collars. I'll check them after they're off if they're ferrous or not. So I don't know if they're stainless steel or if they are titanium. I think they're probably stainless steel because it is a budget knife. But the screw, we've got a nice T8 screw there. And the screw head, it's a nice fit. It doesn't wiggle a lot in there. Let's see, there we go. I'm trying to wiggle it back and forth, and you can't see that name going back much. So nice. Then we've got T6 body screws. And let me get my T6 driver out. Whoops, that's another T8. I've got 3 T8s and 3 T6s, so sometimes I pull the wrong one out. Those are button screws that have a fairly deep recess in them, and they're very good tolerances. You know I dislike button screws, T6 button screws especially on handles. But back to the pivot. I was talking about the pivot one night. We've got ball bearings in there, and the actions, like I said, was quite smooth. The pivot screw did back off during my testing. You know, enough of this, and it came loose until I had quite bad side-to-side blade play. It didn't have play out of the package, but quite quickly it did. That means they're not using a Loctite in here, which I prefer. But it does mean you're probably going to want to use something like Vibratite VC3 thread mate to keep the screws from coming loose. We'll take this knife apart in a little while. The liner lockup, it's just slightly later than I prefer it to be, closer to the middle, but there's loads of room for it to wear over. That's good. The cutout here for the lock release is quite good. The edge of the lock release bar here is slightly softened. It's rounded over, so it's very comfortable to push out of the way. So it's no problem there. Right or left-handed, it's easy to operate, so that's quite good. The handle, like I said, it's G10. We've got layers of an orange, a black, and either a light gray or a white. I'm not sure what color that is. And that's a very funky G10, and Shieldon uses this on a number of their knives. Unfortunately, I'm saying unfortunately, this knife only comes in this handle scale. I really wish they had maybe some solid colors of G10 available, because this is a color scheme that some people are just going to hate. That's just the way it is. I'm kind of indifferent to this color scheme, but I don't find it particularly attractive. But it's not particularly ugly to me either. You decide how much you like it and if you want to buy this knife or not. And extra expense on this, other than having a nice rounded G10, is they've done a lot of milling on the side here. All these little lines that you see there, here, and here, those are all individually milled lines in the G10 there. And of course, that adds time and expense to it, and it gives traction in the hand. It actually feels quite nice in hand. Like right here, your thumb tends to go there, and that gives extra grip, and that's nice. When you're up at the spine, your thumb up here. I wish there was a little longer jimping, but I say that quite often on knives. But the jimping's okay. It's not extra grippy, but it's not hot either, so that's good. And the liners, they are skeletonized just, well, actually a fair bit in there. So we'll take it apart and show you that in a minute. The last couple things, open pillar construction. We've got those nice hourglass shaped posts in here. Lanyard hole, there's a nice long hole back here. When we close the knife, you know, the blade tip comes kind of close over here, so they couldn't put the hole on the end, so they had to put it on the spine. And when it's this big, you know, it's out the back, the paracord is probably not going to interfere with the hand very much unless you've got extremely huge hands. So that's not bad. The pocket clip, we've got, you know, just a standard type pocket clip. Each of their pocket clips are unique. I do wish they would have done a deep carry pocket clip. This pocket clip leaves the knife sticking out of the pocket quite a bit. We've got a scoop at the end. It doesn't flatten out, but I didn't experience any hot spots from it, so I didn't mind that at all. It is rounded a lot there. And we've got button screws holding it down. Let's see how it looks going into a pocket. So it climbs over, and I didn't have any problems. It climbed over every time, and that's how it looks in a pocket. So we've got, let's take a look how much we've got sticking out of the pocket. I didn't measure it before. 3/4 of an inch sticking out of a pocket, and that is roughly 2 centimeters. And with the buttons there, it's good texture. It's easy to pull out. So if you don't mind that your knife is sticking out of the pocket a little bit, that's okay. But if you want a deep carry pocket clip, maybe you can find another pocket clip to use. I don't know if that's how standard that dimension is for how far apart those holes are. There's no left side pocket clip option, although it feels good in the left hand. I quite like it. Now, you want me to take it apart, don't you? Well, I'm not going to spend the time doing it on camera. I'll just show you what it's like taking apart. Houston, we have a problem. While the screws go in quite well, I'm sure they used, there we go, I got it that time. I'm sure they used some Loctite in these, and they were quite tight to loosen up. I got that one loose. Let's try this one again. And just not getting right. I think I stripped that screw. Yep, I stripped that screw already, so I was wrong. The screws look like they're quite nice, but... So I used my drive grip. For those of you who are familiar with this channel, I use it a lot. It's an anti-cam out fluid. It creates grit so that you can, you know, grab onto a screw a whole lot better. It's designed specifically for that. So I got that screw out, I took the pivot screw out, and now I have to, there we go, pull that apart. I can take the knife apart so you can see it. So there you go. Skeletonizing on that side, skeletonizing on that side. That's not good though, because these screws will not come loose. They're just stripped. And I'm experienced with knives. You know, I've reviewed way over 1,000 knives. We're getting close to 1,500 knives that I've reviewed, plus all the many years that I've collected knives before I started CCE. You know, I've been a knife guy since I was a young boy. But yeah, that's too bad. They looked like they were good screws. On the surface, they looked good. And when I put my screwdriver in there, you know, it felt like it was good. But these screws are soft, very, very soft pivot screws. So if you need to take this knife apart, start with drive grip. I didn't start with drive grip. I've got a video about this along with VC3 that I mentioned before, the stuff for the pivot screws. Instead of using thread locker, it's a much better product than thread locker. Get that stuff instead, watch that video. But here you go, liner lock. We've got a ceramic detent ball. We've got ceramic ball bearings, so that's quite nice. They're kind of small, but they're quite nice. I think there's 10 ball bearings on each side. And yes, we've got a free spinning pivot pin. Just have to use screwdrivers on either side, possibly. I didn't have to because they were quite free. At least they didn't use thread locker. And there's the pivot collar. Okay, now I've got it back together. There's a couple things that I forgot to mention before. Blade alignment is very good. It's not perfect, but it's very good. And the detent, I didn't show it to you before, but yeah, the detent is good. That's why it opens so well. And now that I've used my nice lubrication on there, a nice budget lubrication, it works just fine, even better than it did before. So that's quite nice. Let's now go over all the specs and stuff. D2 steel, while it's overused in the industry these days for budget knives, it is a pretty decent budget steel. I just wish, most of the knives would not be D2, and D2 would be on just some knives. Right now, it seems that most budget knives have D2, and we're getting tired of it. We really are getting tired of it. I've been saying that for about a year already. The weight of this knife, not bad. 131 grams, 4.6 ounces for a big knife. The sharpness from the factory, I measured it in 3 spots. It averages out to 165 bests, only slightly worse than average, so no complaints there. The blade length, first the cutting edge length, well, it's the same as the blade length. Straight line from tip to heel, straight line from tip to the G10 is 97.8 millimeters, 3.85 inches. The thickness of the blade is 3.42 millimeters, 0.1345, so a bit over 1/8 of an inch. The blade depth, the widest point is right here at the heel because it's slightly tapering down to here, and then, of course, more so there. That is 27.3 millimeters, 1.07 inches. The thickness behind the grind, again, measured in 3 places, 0.55 millimeters, 21.5 thousandths of an inch. So I wish it was thinner right behind that grind. What I'm talking about when I say that, it's right where it changes from that silver color to black. At that point, 21.5 thou. I like it to be 20 thousandths or less. So it's not terribly thick. It's just a bit thicker than I prefer. The grind angles. This side, it's mostly 23.3 degrees here and 24 degrees here. And this side, it's a little bit different. 18.2 degrees here, and then here it starts at 15.5, 18.3, 19.2. So it's not sharpened, it's actually sharpened better than average, which is a sad commentary on the industry, isn't it? So, yeah. I've ran that hobby horse so hard, it's falling over. So back to the other dimensions. Handle length, 125.4 millimeters, 4.94 inches. The grip area, it's very close to 11 centimeters, just shy, 4.25 inches roughly. And the thickness of the handle, not counting the pocket clip, is 14.97 millimeters. That's 0.588. So it is for big hands, but men's large, no problem at all. Even men's medium, you should find it fairly comfortable. The handle depth within the grip area, the widest point is right there, and that is 25.4 millimeters. That's 1 inch on the nose. When the knife is closed, the widest point is not right here like you might think. It's actually right here. 34.5 millimeters, 1.36 inches. And the total length of this knife is 8.82 inches. So yeah, pretty big knife. What's my final thoughts, my summary about this knife? I had high hopes for Shieldon knives. They are unique. They're not the same old that you can find everywhere. They are different, and some people are going to like that, and some people are not going to like that. But overall, the designs are kind of cool. The construction is pretty good, except for these screws. And that is a big deal to me. But that can be easily fixed at the factory. And it's going to increase the price of these knives by less than 5 cents per knife at the factory. So they can easily do that, and I really hope they do. Now, while I like D-shaped pivot pins, I also like fully round pivot pins because they are technically better for pivoting on a post. Like a full round post with a full round hole is better than an interrupted post. But, you know, having screw holes on either side, it's okay. You just need to have a, you know, vise or something to hold it, and then use screwdrivers on either side. If you just use your bare hands this way, you're just asking for one to slip, and then you scratch across your G10 and maybe do a little gouge in it or something. But that's not a big deal. Lockup, yeah, it's slightly later than I like, but it's still got loads of wear on it. Easy to use, good action. You can use the flipper or the hole to deploy the blade. No problem at all that way. Yep, doing that middle finger flick, that works just fine. It's not hot in the hand, although I thought the pocket clip might be, but it's not. You know, this is not a piercing knife, but I can see somebody who works in a warehouse just loving this knife. You know, that very strong tip there, opening packages and stuff, digging into things. You could use this edge quite a lot. It's a pretty good ODYSEE kind of knife, and it's not super heavy. You know, fair bit of grip on it. The blade's got that nice chamfering on it. I prefer the black wash over the titanium. It does cost a tiny bit more. By the way, black wash generally is a titanium coat as well. It's just a little bit thinner usually, and then it's got the stonewash finish, which they call a black wash. Badging's not too terribly big. I like that it's on the flats here. And the Shieldon's not, you know, terribly big. They show what steel type it is. That's good that they do that. Good construction back here. Although on this one, maybe black standoffs and black screws would look better. But you've got the silver screw here, so it doesn't look out of place. It looks okay to me. It's a decent knife. The Shieldon BOA. Thanks for watching my video. Thanks for liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing. And remember, friends, always cut towards your chum, not your thumb. Bye for now.